Hi, you guys.
Hello, Monique. Hi, Carmen.
So we're back for another discussion. But before we get into our discussion again, we're going to do the new and good because it's so important to start our time together with like what's going on with us and what's making us happy. So let's start with Sandra today. What's your new and good?
First of all, it's great to see you guys in person. And so that's definitely good. Something that was new is I pulled up my resume just recently and realized that I hadn't looked at it or touched it or revised it in the past 8 to 10 years or something like that, because it still had an old address on there. And so it was good to see that, and it felt good to also add the new work that I've done in the past 8 years. And I ended up sharing it with a colleague, and it felt really good for her to be like, dang girl, like, you're awesome, and no wonder you feel overwhelmed sometimes. And so it just really validated like the work that I do, and two, like my emotional state of mind at times. And so I think that ties in really nicely with our conversation that we're going to have today.
How about you, Carmen?
Well, this week I got a massage.
Ooh.
That was really luxurious. I got I just went on old Groupon and, found me a little $50 massage somewhere. And it was really, really nice. It was really, really nice. And when I was getting the massage, I was thinking so much about, like, I should just do this, like, every month at least. And it made me think a lot about, like, they talk about around happiness and, like, experiences versus material things. And I think for me, I tend, especially in this pandemic, because we can't go out and be with people in the ways that we were, that I ended up doing a lot of online shopping.
Yeah.
And I was like, for the amount of money I'm spending buying clothes, please forgive me, environment, that I could just use this money to get a massage. So I think I'm going to try, to schedule it monthly, because I think also just the amount of sitting that I'm doing now, more than ever, it's just been wreaking havoc on my body. So just wanted to take care of my body.
Mm-hmm. And that's something my doctor has recommended for me to do, is
Really?
Massage every month. I've dealt with back issues and knee issues, and so that was, and I have not committed to doing that, even though I keep telling my husband, we keep telling each other, like, this is something that we're going to do, because he loves getting massages too. And so it's like, okay, this is something we're going to do together, and we just haven't committed to that.
Well, let's commit now together.
Okay, we say it out loud, right?
We'll
Put
each
it out
other. I will check in with you.
It shall
check
be.
in with me. If I
All
get my
right,
monthly massage on.
I think I'm like the bougie glamour one in the group, because I'm like, girls, like the Claremont Spa knows me.
Oh, really?
Like forever. It's like facials, massages, even just like places you can use their facilities. So you know how they have like hot tubs and the nice showers and the like steam rooms and all that. You can go and do that at the Claremont for $65.
Oh, you can?
Yes, you can.
I didn't know about that, like at the Kabuki in San Francisco, but I didn't know the Claremont has a similar
You can do
setup.
the Claremont, the Piedmont Springs.
I like that place.
Yes, you need to do that at least once a month.
Okay.
I'm like once a week.
Wouldn't that be nice? That's like super.
That's super
telling
bougie.
you.
That's super bougie.
Revealed.
Okay.
Bouginess has been revealed. I think my new and good is, like I was thinking that like I wasn't walking for a while, and same, I've been sitting in front of a computer, sitting in the same spot, and I could feel my body just like getting wrecked by it. And also just my mental, like just walking from room to room in my house is just killing me. And so I started walking at the Hayward Shoreline again. And that's like, it's so lonely in a good way. that I'm really enjoying that. So I think that's like a new and good for me, is to pick that up again and do that every day.
Yeah, Shoreline is beautiful. I went for a walk there a while ago with a former colleague, Felicia Tripp, who was a counselor here. We went over there, and it was really nice. I'd never really been over there before. It's nice.
Right now there's pink salt in the water. So there's like this whole section of the lake that's pink, like really bright pink. It's pretty cool.
The bay,
Yeah.
Cool.
So that gets us on to our topic for today, because we're talking about coming back in the spring, all of us being back here and making sure that we take care of our mental health, right, while we do that, because, there's so many stressors that we have to think about when we come back. So how are you feeling about what we should be doing to prepare for our mental health and preparing ourselves to come back in the spring?
Well, there should definitely be like a scream room on campus. So Joy, can you get that to happen? A scream room where we just like come in and scream and let our fears out, and either before we go into the classroom or after we go into an in-person meeting that we've been doing on Zoom, where we could just like fade out if we need to. And so, yeah.
I've been reading about, because you had talked about coming back to campus and being in front of the students and having those appointments, and how like that burnout feeling. And they've done studies on like that people are getting burnt out really fast. I think it was CNBC. It was like people are coming back and they're totally burnt out. But then this expectation that we're back, and so you got to be back, is there. And so they're feeling, when they come off of that, feeling inadequate, right? So that burnout feeling turns into a feeling of inadequacy. Like, I can't do my job anymore. I'm not good at my job anymore, that type of thing. So I'm wondering, like, what would you recommend for the burnout? Like how can we stay away from the burnout? Because you're super happy to be with your students, but the burnout is real.
Yeah, well, I think that's where you have to have a team. Previously, we talked about how, like, me going into the classroom, it took a team for us to get that even ready for us to be in the classroom. And after effects was like having to chat and talk about, oh, that was a great, like, good day. Like, but this, this is how I feel. This is what came up. This is, and so being able to talk about that and having a space to be able to talk about that and was real, right? And what was needed for us to like download our emotions and to download the reality of the stressfulness of a teacher knocking on our door going like, are you almost done? Like, when are you gonna, I'm scheduled to be in here. And it's just like, and then the after effects of that, like, now I have to write a memo to my dean, but we don't have a dean right now, so it goes to the VP, and so then it's just like this whole other layer of where the stress then becomes extra.
Yeah.
Right.
I think. Oh no, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, but being able to talk about that and being able to have the validation where I'm like, okay, I CC'd my coworker, my team members, and so they were like, okay, thank you so much, that was a good email. It's like brings that stress level down. It's like, okay, that was good, and it only took 5 minutes, and so now I feel better, and hopefully it's just to bring it to their attention. But I think it takes a team.
Yeah. I was going to say also, I think in regards to burnout, like taking breaks is really important. I was on my Headspace app, which is like a app for meditation, and they have this thing called the Wake Up, where like if you they do like 10 deep breaths, but they have like a little, almost like a show, like a 5-minute show about a topic. And one of the topics was burnout, and they were saying how you should take a break, like during the day, you should be taking breaks every couple of minutes, like just stop for a few minutes. And then like during the week, you should take hours. And then during the month, you should take 1 day off. So I thought that was just like a real interesting way of kind of laying it out. And it's kind of just stayed in my mind about like, okay, like sometimes I'll just be working. And it's like, okay, let's just stop right now, get up and go to the kitchen and get a glass of water, look outside, listen to the birds or something, and then come back. I feel like I'm not as good as like the taking a break, like a day off a month, but it was kind of nice to read something that was encouraging the idea of just taking a break. Because I think in this society, we're so pushed to be productive, and we're pushed to be productive at a high level too, and I know one thing that I tell people a lot and tell myself is about like kind of lowering expectations of I think especially in COVID time, I'm just like, I can't perform at the level that I was before, I mean, being online, like it's just not going to be the same. And so to stop trying to have this expectation that it's going to be that way, to kind of give myself a break.
And give yourself permission as well, giving yourself permission to take a break, giving yourself permission to take a day off is also can be a shift. I mean, we all know it. Like, we all know that that's going to help us. We all know that that's good for us. We've been hearing it our whole careers, right? But how many of us do make that commitment? And so it definitely takes a team to make that commitment. Where we all end up taking a break, or we all end up taking a walk around the campus, or going out and playing with the dog, or and what have you?
Well, one thing that I was reading was this thing about the people are kind of mourning the loss of their autonomy. So they know that they're going to go back to work, and that now they're going to be watched. Not that they're going to intending, like, even at home, they're producing well, right? The article talks about, like, actually people would have more flexibility. They produce better work, right? They're under less stress. They know they can start and stop when they need to. And so the work is better. And so these people are kind of mourning the fact that they're going to be watched again, right? And that the expectation to keep working is going to be there, even because they know it's not healthy for them, right? It's like when you're, so this is part of the mental health issue, right? It's like you almost are starting to feel like I'm going to walk into something that I know is unhealthy, right? And, we talk about it with capitalism. Like, capitalism is unhealthy. Right? It's like healthy.
But let me get my Amazon account ready.
Right, exactly. I was going to say healthy when you're shopping online. Super healthy. I'm like, I love this capitalism. But not healthy when you're working it, right? And so I think that is the thing that is almost triggering in some ways, right? This idea that, like, in my home, I can say, I need a break. Like, I need to stop, right? Here, I can't say that, right? Not in the same way, right? And so then what do you do when you're, in your office and people are just coming at you and you need a break, right? And so I started looking at stuff like that. Like, what do you do? Like, what do you do when that happens? Because, we were talking the other day that it can become a very triggering place, right? And we want it to be a happy place, a place that we can go back and, like, be excited about being here, still feel like we own our work, right? And so therefore we can be proud and happy about it. So
I think that's something that I have practiced in my role as a counselor and a coordinator, and being able to work in a team. So there is an office manager where I work right now, and so I've been able to utilize that. We've been able to utilize that to our advantage. So when I need a break, I will let her know, like, I need 10 minutes or 15 minutes, or I'll be back, or, take care, hold it down while, like, I close my door. Right. And so, and she'll do the same as well. And so we've been able to protect each other and take care of each other that way. And so that's, again, I go back to having a team, having a colleague, having, I know your offices are more in a hallway, where, like, anybody has access to your hallway and your door. And so even if you're not there, or even if your door is closed,
even if you're, like, covering the window,
somebody is still, like, knocking on your door, or your phone keeps ringing, or your emails keep popping up. And it's just like, when are you going to give yourself permission to say no? Right.
I think academia has set it up so that we are very isolated, and it's very individual and set up to be, like, competitive with each other. So trying to, I mean, I think, you know, one of the best things about being in a learning community, right, is that you're set up to be in a team, right? And so there's people that I feel, you know, the Change It Now learning community with Jason and Pedro and Mike, and I feel very team oriented there. I feel team with our Chabot Collaborative Equity, Professional Equity Growth group. I feel very much of a team there, and in the English department. But again, it's like, we're in this long hall, our doors are closed, we have different hours, you know, just even when we're there, like sometimes, you know, I might be there and I'm looking for someone to chat with and they're not there, you know.
Or they're in class.
Or they're in class, you know, so there's just so much isolation built into their jobs. And I don't know, I feel lonely a lot of the time. I feel lonely a lot of the time at Chabot, and I feel like that is hard, you know. Or just, if I want to, you know, talk to Pedro and I have to walk all the way across campus, and then, you know, as you're walking across, you see 3 or 4 people that want to talk to you about this or that, and sometimes it's triggering the things that they want to talk to you about, or just whatever, you know. So for me, you know, we were talking about triggers, like just coming back to campus, I feel a lot of anxiety because I do feel very impacted by, you know, I don't know, I think it was on Facebook or Instagram, I saw some meme about like empaths, you know, and just like how, you know, some people just hear words, but like we're paying attention to tone and, you know, body language. And I am so sensitive that way. So I've been thinking a lot about like being so sensitive, but also being someone who, you know, puts myself out there a lot, and like how to balance that I'm putting myself out there, but I'm so impacted by everything, you know? And I feel a lot of anxiety about kind of coming back to that and wanting to just develop just skills to manage that a little bit better, you know?
See, that's what I want to know. You know, like when we're thinking about like, what do we want to know, is I want to know not just how the college is going to do it, but like even if we develop it within our own circles, right? I want to know, how do we deal with those things, right? Like I want trainings on, you know, like how do you deal with when you're being triggered? What are some things that you can do? You know, like, do we need to have a group that gets together and talks about things, you know, debriefs and stuff like that? Do we need to have a screen room, or do we have a screen room where we can like, you know, like shout at the top of our lungs?
Your car is always a good place.
Well, but you know what? Like, it's like, so like when you're in the moment of panicking, unless you've learned it, you don't know that, right? So like if somebody, like if we're sitting in a meeting and they're like, hey, you know, like these are some things that you can do. Those, when that trigger thing happens, you'll be like, okay, these are the things that I can do, right? But if no one's ever said any of those things to you, it's like you're just out there, right? You're just like suffering, right?
And holding on to that.
Right. Which
stress,
is like,
right?
so,
Which creates the burnout, like
right.
it triggers
body
the burnout,
problems
yeah.
too, right? Physical.
Like in our real world, right? In our real world, but in like in like the world where people walk around and drive, like right now, there's so many road rage things happening, right? There was nobody on the freeway during the pandemic. Now all of a sudden everybody's back on the freeway. Now everybody's getting angry at each other. They don't know how to deal with that, right? They're not used to being out. They're probably triggered by the burnout of the day. And then we have people shooting each other, getting into fights, getting into car crashes, when it's like, breathe, you know, like, but we're not a society that holds in high value giving people ways to deal with like their mental triggers, to deal with their mental health. We don't prioritize that. So we just say, aren't you excited? Go back. Everything will be cool. You know, like, this is what you knew before. In reality, before they were being triggered too, you know, like, so it's like, here's the moment in which we can actually do something, you know, like, so I don't know. I think there's a lot of learning that we need to do, right?
And I'll also say, I mean, basically, I've just been with Black people, you know, in my house for like the last 2 years. I haven't, you know, had to deal with the request to assimilate, you know? And so kind of coming back to that, like, request to, I don't know, to assimilate, you know? And
to
just having to deal
cultures.
with racism and deal with things that I just haven't had to deal with, just being at home with my husband and daughter, you know? And that brings up anxiety also. It's just like, the crazy racist things that people say and do, and having to manage that and, and sometimes be thoughtful about it depending on the situation, and sometimes having to like set a limit and, check somebody on that, or just sitting with it, like that's a whole other, that was one of the things when the pandemic started. I was like, oh, this is kind of nice.
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with like racism
That's
in a certain
like
way.
I saw a little TikTok thing that like this girl was like, when like privilege statements happen on Zoom, she just like closes her little thing, right? You can just be like, whatever, I check out of that, right?
Remove yourself from the situation, right? Yeah.
But like when we're here, you just have to like
I know.
sit there in that meeting,
you can't like stop the video so they can't
So then they can't see it.
expressions, you can't turn the volume down on them talking, so you don't have to listen to it. You just have to sit there and or do we?
Or do we? Right? I mean, we could say something.
Put a little mask up that says mute. Muting.
I am muting right now.
Okay,
Privilege statement.
I am turning my camera off.
We have two paddles. One is like privilege. The other side says racism. Muting. Racism.
That would be so cool.
And it goes the other way too. There's people that racists that they've been in a room where they've been able to share.
Oh God.
And do whatever they've wanted to say for the past 2 years.
I know,
They've
right.
been emboldened,
And
right?
so that nobody's been there to to shut them down or to call them out on that's not right. And so, wow, how is that going to present itself in person?
Yeah. Right.
And to our students.
Right.
Right now I'm like big on, and this is part of our learning community teaching as well, is that we're providing a safe, comfortable environment for our students. That we want to get to know them. We want them to get to know us. That to introduce trustworthiness into our classroom. And so we're modeling this for our students, that when they go into another classroom or a classroom with another teacher who does not value that.
It's heartbreaking. And so also trying to teach our students how to take care of themselves, when they have to go into those environments, because it's hard, because as much as we're trying to offer that in our own spaces, we know that it's not going to be there, in every space that they enter. And so how do they take care of themselves? How do they stand up for themselves and advocate for themselves in those spaces? And how to decide, how to decide, like, okay, am I going to take this on or am I not? Because I think there's also, for people of color, it's like some message that we're supposed to struggle all the time. We're supposed to fight, and sometimes we can just be like, forget this shit. I'm not doing it. I will take, get what I can out of this class and move on. Because you just don't always have the capacity to take every little thing on.
And as a counselor, that's one thing that when I'm helping students pick out classes and saying, this is your student education plan. These are recommendations. There's a difference between requirements and recommendations. And so when you register for this class, and like, if it's a required class, sometimes you're just gonna have to suck it up with whoever's like standing in that classroom, like teaching that classroom, and get what you can out of it. Sometimes it's gonna be without that teacher, and find yourself like a study group so that you can pass that class, right? But definitely talk to somebody before you make that decision, because sometimes there's other options, right? You don't have to take it that semester, and we can go ahead and switch, so that it could give you time or space or a different opportunity to take it with somebody else. But you have to also know yourself, right? As a student, to say, okay, I'm going to be able to take it this semester, or I'm not in the headspace right now to deal with this and everything else that's going on in my life, right? And so being able to provide the students with that insight is important for me. And giving them opportunities and not feel like they're stuck. And I think that's important for us to remember too.
For ourselves.
For ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that we have opportunities. We are the professionals. That we have choices that we can make. And reminding each other of that is super important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes just I don't know, maybe the traumas that we have faced in our lives, whether as young people or adults, kind of make us, maybe we internalize some powerlessness, right?
Yeah.
So when we're in these situations, we don't know that there are things that we can do. Like we could walk out of a meeting, you know? It's like we don't have to stay and take, you know, with everything that's happening. And I always think about that all the time, and I never do. I think I'm like one of those, I get frozen, you know?
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to figure out more of like how to jiggle things so that, you know, I don't just stay and just in this deer in the headlights kind of situation. But yeah, just trying to empower ourselves, right? Like you said, so that we can be in control of these situations.
I think there are so many wonderful things too that you can do through meditation for yourself. Because, you know, sometimes when I think about the like walking out of the room thing, sometimes I almost feel like, you know, that thing where it like allows them to win. Like now you're not in the room and you've, you know, made a scene and people, you can't explain yourself or whatever. And so you don't want to do it, right? And also it's a big statement to make, right? It's a big thing to do. And for our students, a lot of times they don't feel like they're in the power position, or even us, right? We don't feel like we're in the power position to make that kind of statement. But like these meditation things can be helpful. Like I do this one, and I told my students about it because they're reading a book that's really triggering. I was telling you, it's like full of it's called The Violence Almanac. So it's full of violence, right? It's a beautiful book, but full of violence. And it's like, look, this is going to be triggering. And here's some meditation things. And I do this one where it's like you focus on 5 things you see, then you focus on 4 things you hear, 3 things you smell, 2 things, you know, like you can touch, and then 1 thing you taste. And then I'm like, I don't even remember who was talking. you know, like by the time I go through that and I'm breathing, I'm like, I don't even remember who said what that made me mad, or I don't care about it anymore. Like I just, you know, I've decided I'm not going to take that on today, you know? And so I think like, you know, those little things, if we can give that knowledge to, you know, like our students about you do have power, and to our colleagues, you do have power, and also just tools, like, because in the moment there's something, you know, like biological happening to you when that happens. Like breathe, count these things, you know, like do the thing, body scan yourself, right? What do your toes feel like right now, all the way up to your head? Like do those things, listen to music, you know, like they don't know, you know, like they don't know what you're listening to in your ear, but you know, like do these things, because I think it's super important, you know, or else, you know, especially like feelings, you know, triggering feelings, they can turn to anger, shame, depression, like these really dark things. Guilt, right? Super dark things for both the person and the community around them, right? And so we should be careful, and we should be teaching. You know?
That's interesting, just the thinking, because in our BIPOC faculty leaders affinity group, we were talking about cognitive distortions, right? And like how things happen and what like comes into our head. So like maybe you have a bad class and you might have, we talked a lot about kind of either or thinking, where it's like, oh, that was just terrible, I'm the worst teacher ever, you know, and just how we frame things in our head. And like, so if that's in your head, you like maybe you had a hard class and you can't see that something good did happen, and you're just like beating yourself up, you know, then that definitely leads to the depression and the anxiety. And so how do we even, you know, just change our framing of events that happen in our lives, or the triggers that we're experiencing, you know, or the ways that we might mind read and say, oh my God, she hell of hates me because she said it that way. And it's because of, you know, and like these stories that we tell ourselves, you know, and just having to stop our minds from just going down the rabbit hole a lot of the times, you know, because our minds definitely play those games and can get us all worked up, right? Over nothing, you know?
Right.
Pretty crazy.
And in this world, we don't prioritize those tools.
Yeah.
So, you know, that comes to our last segment, which is usually giving recommendations. And the recommendations really help us in our lives, you know, like reclaim some space and some time and some sanity. So I'm wondering, what do you guys have to recommend?
Around this time, in the middle of the semester, I always bring up the book, The Four Agreements, by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's a reminder to me to be impeccable with my word. So when I speak, that I speak the truth and speak what feels comfortable and right for me, to not take things personally. It's not always about me, right? We don't know what's going on in other people's lives, especially during this time, right? So a reminder to not take things personally, to not make assumptions. We all know that that's the worst thing, and it's a natural thing also. It's a human being thing, and I think in this society it's accepted very easily to make assumptions. And so it's just a reminder to me to not make assumptions. Let's do our research. Let me ask questions so I can figure out what's going on. And then always do my best. Even if nobody's watching, even if it's for myself, like do the best for myself. So during this time, it's always a good reminder to bring that up for myself. And I'm excited to share that with you guys because I think in some of the things that you said, Carmen, is just like, okay, let's remind ourselves that, you know, we don't take things personally. So.
Can you say the name of the book again?
The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, Ruiz.
Just writing it down.
Yeah. How about you, Carmen? What are you going to recommend?
The thing that's on my mind to recommend is a show on Netflix called On My Block. And me and my daughter love this show. I think I like it more than she likes it, but that's just how it is. And it's about 4 teens in a fictional neighborhood in Los Angeles, and just kind of coming of age story. It's really, really funny. It's they're Black and Latino, so it's that's the piece that I really love about it. It's just very, very diverse and multicultural, and just really showing a close connection between these two communities through this friendship that they have. And to me, it's kind of like the Goonies, because there's like a mystery involved with a map and treasure being found, and maybe a little bit of like Stand By Me, you know? So it's funny and it's heartwarming, and this is its last season. This was the 4th season. So I would definitely recommend watching that show on Netflix, On My Block. It's very sweet.
Cool. So I think the thing I recommend is somewhat connected to like thinking about, you know, like families and stuff, is like if you have a question about one of your ancestors, ask it. Right? That's the thing I recommend. That like ask for the story, ask, you know, like where did they go? What did they do? You know, just ask whoever you can before that story's gone, you know, like before you can't ask anymore. Because there's so much that you find out in that may matter or may not, but you just don't want to have the question. And it's kind of just fun to hear, right? It's fun to hear the story. And so I think that that's what I would recommend, is if you have a question about someone in your family or in your history, right? It doesn't even have to be family. Ask it. So I've enjoyed spending this time with you guys. It's so cool to see you with legs.
Full bodies.
Full bodies.
Let's put our brown bag away for the next meeting.
And thank you to the people who listen to this, listening to the Brown Bag podcast.
And thank you to our producers. The next room.
Yes. CJ.
And Chad. Thank you.
Yeah.